There is a kind of betrayal that doesn't explode. It doesn't come in the heat of an argument or the flash of a slammed door. No, the worst kind arrives quietly. Dressed in linen, seated at a long polished table, passed from hand to hand like gravy. Thanksgiving, Sarah's favorite holiday. Her family's, not mine, not once. I was always the stranger at that table, the one who married in, not born in. They smiled when they saw me, poured my wine, thanked me for carving the turkey. But their eyes always lingered too long when I kissed Sarah's cheek, as if to say, he's not one of us. As if to remind me that this house, though half paid with my money, still bore her dead husband's ghost in every photograph on the wall. This year it was supposed to be better. That's what Sarah said. It's time, she told me weeks earlier. Her voice soft but full of that vague pressure she always used when she wanted something to sound like compromise. The boys are older now. Let's just be a family this time. So I nodded, like I always did, like a fool. I took off work, booked the caterer when she realized her oven was too small, drove out to her family's country house 2 days early to help set up, hung lights along the front porch, repaired a leaking bathroom pipe, and revarnished the bench swing her mother liked to use. The house was filled with noise and bodies. Her parents, her siblings, cousins I didn't recognize but pretended to, and the boys, grown now, practically men, standing in the corners of every room like sentinels, whispering to each other whenever I walked in. Still, I smiled. I carried boxes. I uncorked wine. I played the role, even when they didn't look me in the eye, even when they called their father Dad in front of me, just loud enough to make sure I heard. Even when I overheard Sarah's younger son, the one I used to drive to violin lessons, tell his cousin, "He's not really our dad. He just pays for everything." I swallowed it. I told myself it's Thanksgiving. Don't ruin it. Don't be the one who turns a meal into a war. And then the meal began. The table groaned under the weight of food. Silverware glinted. Laughter bubbled. People toasted things, jobs, engagements, good health, the new baby. I passed plates. I made polite jokes. I even held Sarah's hand under the table. For a moment, I convinced myself the worst was over, that maybe this year would end differently. Then her eldest son stood, fork in one hand, wine glass in the other, that smirk on his face, the same one he wore at 14 when he told me, "You're not in charge of me." He raised his glass. "We just want to say," he began, and the room quieted. A few people lifted their phones. Someone whispered, "Ah," expecting something sweet, sentimental. "We obey our real dad." I froze. The words hadn't finished falling when his brother chimed in, louder this time. "Yeah, not this impostor." And then, for good measure, "He doesn't get a vote." There it was, the public execution, in front of the family, in front of Sarah, in front of me. I looked around. Some faces were confused. Others were amused. A few, the ones who never liked me, were already smiling behind their wine glasses. Cousin laughed. Someone hit record. Maybe they thought it was a joke. Maybe they didn't care. But I didn't look at them for long. I looked at her, Sarah, at my wife, my partner, my supposed equal. She was staring at her plate. Her eyes didn't lift. Her jaw tightened, just slightly. She adjusted her napkin, took a slow sip of wine. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't say my name, didn't say theirs. No correction, no defense, just silence. I waited for her to say, "That's enough," or "Don't speak to him that way," or even just apologize. Nothing. She didn't even look at me. In that moment, I felt something inside me die. Not from the insult. God knows I've taken worse from those boys. Not from the audience. I learned long ago that this family thrives on appearances. What broke me was her silence, her complicity, her refusal to choose. She didn't need to agree with them. She only needed to stand up. But she didn't. She chose comfort over loyalty, peace over principle. So I nodded. "Fair enough," I said quietly. And I stood. The chair scraped back across the floor. The sound was sharp, final. A few heads turned. No one stopped me. Sarah didn't move. Not even then. I walked out. Not dramatically. Not with fury. Not with broken plates or shouted names. Just walked. Down the hallway. Past the photographs of a man I will never be. Past the coat rack I built with my own hands. Out into the night. The cold hit me like clarity. I stood on the porch for a while, listening to the laughter continue inside. A little more forced now, a little thinner. I could feel their discomfort, their awkward glances toward the door. But no one followed. No one came to find me. Not even her. She stayed seated at the table, pretending not to notice the hole I'd left behind. I lit a cigarette, my first in 6 years. Sarah hated them. Said the smell clung to things. That night I wanted it to. I wanted the stench of it to follow me back in, to stain the linens, to remind her of the moment she chose comfort over commitment. But I didn't go back in. I walked to my truck instead, sat behind the wheel, let the silence settle. I didn't drive off. Not yet. I stared through the windshield, hands on the steering wheel, watching my breath fog the glass. I wasn't angry. That's the strange part. I thought I would be, but I wasn't. I was done. Done pretending. Done playing husband when it suited her, and ghost when it didn't. Done being the provider who gets no say, the protector who gets no respect, the father figure who gets no fatherhood. I thought about the last decade. Every bill I paid. Every weekend I gave up. Every time I stepped in when their real dad vanished again. Missed another birthday, another game, another emergency. I was the one who stayed. And for what? So they could gut me at the family table while my wife pretended not to hear? No, not anymore. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, paused. Not yet. That part would come later. First, I had to feel it, the full weight of it, the betrayal, the final severing, because this was not about anger. It was about clarity. And now I was finally clear. I sat there for nearly 20 minutes before I went back inside. Not to rejoin the meal, not to reconcile. I walked through the house, past the guests, the eyes that wouldn't meet mine, back to the guest room where I had stored my things. Sarah passed me in the hallway. She didn't speak. Neither did I. I packed quietly. Shirt, jacket, watch. I left the gifts on the nightstand. Let her decide who they belonged to now. Then I walked out again. This time I drove. No explanation. No goodbye. No scene. Just consequence. Because sometimes silence is the clearest answer you'll ever get. And sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's the only power you have left. The house still smelled like roasted turkey when I started pulling wires from the walls. Not literally. Not yet. But that's what it felt like. Every system, every connection, I had built it, paid for it, set it up in their names so they could feel grown, independent, free, like their lives were theirs alone, like their comfort was natural. It wasn't. It was a network, silent, invisible, held together by my login credentials. And now I was done being their ghost. It was just after midnight when I walked into my office, the small room no one entered unless they needed something. I turned on the desk lamp, sat in the chair that still groaned under my weight. The house was quiet now. Sarah was still at her mother's, texting me in fragments. You overreacted. It was a joke. Can we talk tomorrow? I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop. There's a kind of clarity that comes after humiliation. Cold, surgical, like a scalpel through flesh. You stop caring about appearances. You stop explaining yourself. You just move. First, the joint bank account. The one Sarah asked to link, just for bills. I removed her access. One click. Confirm. Done. Next, the boys' cards. They weren't children anymore, at least not when it suited them. One had a student visa tied to my line. The other had a secondary debit card under my account. I froze both. Then I paused. Breathed. Looked at the framed photo on my desk. All of us at the lake years ago. Before the lines were drawn. Before their father's face started showing up in their Instagram captions again. Before I learned how easy it was to become obsolete in a home you built. I turned the frame down. and kept going. Insurance, medical, dental, auto. All canceled for dependents not legally bound. I had signed every line. I unsigned them now. That took longer. 3 phone calls, 2 online portals, a password reset. But I was patient, methodical, not cruel, just resolved. Tuition autopay? Gone. Spotify family plan? Removed their emails. Netflix? Disney Plus? HBO? Delete, delete, delete. One by one, the conveniences of their lives dimmed like lights in a hallway behind me. The faucet was off. The well dry. I left one message. Just one. Group chat. Family thread. The same one they used to send memes, dinner plans, birthday reminders. I typed slowly. No venom. No explanation. Just truth. From now on, it's every man for himself. Good luck. Then I set the phone down and waited. Nothing. Not a single reply. Not even what? It was 1:43 a.m. when I heard footsteps, quick, confused, outside the office door. One of the boys, checking the router, pacing. Then a door slammed. Not mine. I didn't flinch. Sarah texted again. This time longer. Michael, they're just kids. You can't punish them like this. Please, let's talk before you do something you regret. Too late. Regret is what happens when you feel uncertain. I felt nothing but clarity. I looked over the list I had made that morning. Back when I thought I'd just suffer through another Thanksgiving and pretend to smile. It was titled What I Pay For. I had scribbled it half angrily between coffee and repairs. It was 4 pages long. 4 pages of tuition, textbooks, car repairs, birthday gifts, dentist visits, Wi-Fi upgrades, cell plans, sports uniforms, dorm furniture, therapy sessions, late-night gas fill-ups, school trips, meal deliveries. 4 pages of my fingerprints on their lives. And none of it earned me a place at the table. So I crossed it all out. Every line. And I exhaled. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of guilt. Out of anticipation. Because the storm was coming. Not from me, but from the vacuum I'd left behind. Morning came quietly. I made coffee. Fed the dog. Read the news. At 9:12 a.m. I heard Sarah's car pull into the driveway. She was home earlier than expected. I didn't go to greet her. She walked into the house like it was still hers. Bags in hand, eyes scanning, face stiff. Michael? She called from the hallway. I stayed in the kitchen. She found me there. Stopped in the doorway. You froze the accounts, she said. Not a question. I nodded. You shut everything down? Another nod. She stared at me, disbelief melting into something uglier. That look women give when the man they leaned on starts leaning away. Are you insane? She said, voice barely a whisper. You shut down their insurance? They're not my sons, I said calmly. Isn't that what they said? They didn't mean it, she snapped. They were just being clear. I interrupted. They were being clear. And so am I. She moved closer, her face tightening. This isn't how families work, Michael. You don't just pull the plug. You don't get to decide unilaterally. Don't I? I said, and reached into the drawer beside me. Pulled out the file, the paperwork, laid it flat on the counter between us. Account access, transaction logs, request forms with her signature. You asked for full access last year. Remember? For convenience. She didn't touch the papers. So I gave it. I continued. I funded everything. Quietly. You said I shouldn't expect gratitude. So I didn't. You said I shouldn't act like their dad. So I didn't. I met her eyes. And now I won't pay like one either. She looked at the pages, not reading them, just registering their weight. Like they were receipts for something she didn't remember buying. This is punishment, she said finally. You're punishing them for words. No, I said. I'm correcting an error. I'm removing myself from a role no one believes I occupy. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her shoulders slumped, just slightly. Then, what are they supposed to do now? I sipped my coffee. Figure it out. Silence stretched between us like a crack in the foundation. Neither of us stepped over it. Then, faintly from down the hall, one of the boys shouting, "Why's my card not working?" Another voice, "Is the internet out?" Sarah blinked. I watched her throat move as she swallowed something heavy. "They're scared," she said softly. "They don't understand what's happening." "They will," I replied. "Soon." She stepped back, stared at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. Maybe I had always been. She turned and left the room. No slam. No cry. Just retreat. And I stood alone in the kitchen, warm coffee in hand, listening to the slow unraveling of the system I had once built for them. One that no one even noticed until it stopped working. The house didn't fall apart all at once. It sagged first, quietly, like a beam rotting behind drywall. By the next morning, the silence was no longer passive. It was frantic. Phones buzzed and died. Doors opened and closed without purpose. I could feel the panic moving through the walls, searching for something solid to hold on to. It didn't find me. Sarah cornered me in the office just after noon. I hadn't locked the door. I wanted her to come in. I wanted her to see me sitting exactly where I always had, calm, upright, unmoved. Her face was flushed, eyes wild, hair pulled back too tight. She didn't knock. "What did you do?" she demanded. I looked up slowly. "Good afternoon." "Don't do that," she snapped. "Don't pretend this is normal. The bank locked us out. The insurance company won't answer. The boys can't access their school portals. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I nodded once. "Yes. You've destroyed this family," she said, voice shaking now. "You humiliated them. You humiliated me." That almost made me smile. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the folder. Thick, heavy. Paper doesn't forget the way people do. I set it on the desk between us and opened it, page by page. Statements, authorizations, access logs. Her name was everywhere. "You asked for full access," I said evenly. "For convenience. Your word." She stared down at the pages, lips parted. "I never thought you'd use it like this." "That's the problem," I replied. "You never thought about it at all." She slammed her hand on the desk. "They're your responsibility." I tilted my head. "No, they made that clear. In front of everyone." Her voice cracked. "They were joking." "No," I said softly. "They were declaring." She faltered then, just a step back, just enough to expose the truth. "You didn't stop them," I continued. "You didn't correct them. You didn't even look at me." She swallowed hard. "I didn't want a scene. And I didn't want a marriage where my worth depends on silence," I said. She whispered, "Did you really shut it all down?" I closed the folder. "Yes." No apology. No explanation. She looked at me like she was seeing the cost of something she'd spent years buying on credit. "You could have talked to me first." "I did," I said. "Every time I swallowed it. Every time I paid anyway. Every time I let them erase me." She shook her head, backing toward the door. "You're cold. I don't even recognize you." I stood. "That's because you never looked closely before." I walked past her without touching her. No shove. No brush of the shoulder. Nothing that could be twisted later into aggression. Behind me something shattered. Maybe a glass. Maybe an illusion. I didn't turn around. By evening, the boys were spiraling. One locked himself in the garage. The other slammed doors until the hinges cried. Sarah paced. Phone pressed to her ear, voice dropping lower with every failed call. I heard my name thrown around like an accusation. But no one came to me anymore. They finally understood something had shifted. That yelling wouldn't restore access. That outrage wouldn't reopen accounts. Power doesn't argue. It withdraws. That night I packed again. Not in anger. In completion. I left my wedding ring on the dresser. Not dramatic. Just accurate. When Sarah found it later, she screamed. I know she did. I could hear it from the driveway. I didn't stop. The next morning, I moved into the apartment I'd already secured. Close to work. Quiet. Bare walls. No ghosts. Days passed. Then weeks. The house remained standing, but hollowed. No car, no money, no certainty, just consequences echoing room to room. One afternoon, a knock. I opened the door and found her younger son standing there. Not angry, not begging, just tired. "I didn't understand," he said. I nodded. "Most people don't. Until it's gone." He looked down. "I see it now." I believed him, but belief no longer moved me. "This wasn't revenge," I told him. "It was reclamation." He left without asking for anything, and I closed the door gently. So tell me now, when silence is chosen over loyalty, when respect is replaced by convenience, when a man is reduced to a function and not a place, is walking away cruelty? Or is it the only remaining form of self-respect? Would you have stayed? Or would you have finally let the system shut down? The silence I paid for was the first peace I'd had in years. Not just the silence of an empty apartment, the gentle hum of the fridge, the soft tick of a cheap wall clock, but the silence inside. The silence that comes when no one is leeching your energy, demanding your money, expecting your presence while discarding your name. I didn't realize how loud my life had been until I left, until I turned the key and heard nothing behind me. No footsteps, no slammed doors, no contempt echoing off the walls I'd paid to insulate. I slept for 11 hours that first night. No texts, no alerts, no passive-aggressive sighs from the other side of the bed. Just the darkness of a man finally allowed to be alone with his dignity. The apartment wasn't much. One bedroom. The carpet smelled faintly of dust and forgotten time. The walls were bare, save for one framed print left behind by the last tenant. A mountain half-lit by sunrise. Kept it. Something about it felt earned. I lived small. Coffee in the morning, a walk before work, silence in the evenings. No shared calendars. No financial requests disguised as just a little help. I didn't check the group chat. I had muted it the night I left. When I finally opened it 2 weeks later, there were 83 unread messages. I didn't read a single one. I didn't need to. They said all they needed to at that Thanksgiving table. And I'd answered not with words, but with removal. There's a power in restraint that most people never understand. Everyone wants the last word. Everyone wants to be heard. But walking away without a word, that leaves an echo that's louder than any speech. And my silence had weight. Sarah tried to reach me first. Texts at odd hours. Some soft, "I miss you." I didn't handle it well. Others sharp, "You're punishing all of us for a joke." Then came the voicemails, tearful, incoherent. One ended with her whispering, "Please come home. We need you." No, I thought, you need what I bring. There's a difference. Her sons reached out eventually. First the younger. Just one message, "Can we talk?" No apology. No ownership. Just a toe dipped into the well to see if it still held water. I didn't respond. Then the older one, the bold one, the same one who stood at the head of the table like a man giving a toast at my funeral. He sent a wall of text. No greeting. No punctuation. Just panic disguised as entitlement. "We're literally drowning here. You made your point. Okay, you win. Just stop this already. This isn't how a man acts. This isn't how a dad acts. You're being heartless." I read it once, then deleted it. They didn't understand. Still, even now, they thought this was about winning, about pride, about ego. They didn't see it for what it was: a reset, a severance, a clean, surgical removal of a system that was never mine, but always mine to uphold. I never responded to them. Not once. Not in text. Not in call. Not in person. My silence became the border wall they never thought I'd build. Not because I wanted to keep them out, but because they never invited me in. Then came the letter. Not email. Not a text. A real envelope, delivered by hand. From Sarah. She had written it, front and back, her handwriting small and tight, like she was trying to fit the whole collapse into a single piece of paper. She didn't beg. She didn't rage. She confessed. She wrote that she had failed me, that she had allowed her boys to poison what we had, that she had watched me be stripped of respect and said nothing, thinking it would pass, that she had assumed my strength was infinite, my patience bottomless. that she had forgotten that even the strongest pillars crack under enough weight. She wrote, "You were the only man in their lives who never abandoned them, and I let them treat you like a stranger in your own home. I failed you. I see it now." She wrote that the house was quiet now, that the boys rarely spoke, that one had dropped out of school, that the other was working double shifts just to pay for gas, that Todd, their biological father, had resurfaced long enough to collect their desperation, promise help, and vanish again. She wrote, "We thought we could live without you. We were wrong." And finally, at the bottom, in ink faded from hesitation, "If you never forgive us, I understand. But if there's any piece of you left that wants to come back, not for the boys, not for the bills, but for me, I'll be here." I folded the letter, set it on the counter, left it there for a week. I didn't respond, not out of cruelty, out of clarity, because by then the world had rearranged itself. They lived in that house now, no car, no money, no certainty. And I lived in this small apartment. No voices, no expectations, no burdens. And between us was the line they drew years ago, traced in sarcasm and silence and weaponized bloodlines. They had chosen who I was. Now they had to live with who I became. I saw Sarah one more time. She showed up at my office unannounced. Makeup faded, eyes older. She stood in the doorway and said nothing for a long time. Then, "Can we talk?" I looked at her, really looked, and realized something simple. I didn't hate her. I just didn't belong to her anymore. I nodded toward the chair across from my desk. She sat. We talked. About logistics, final things, closing accounts, selling the house. She didn't cry. I think she was past crying. When she left, she paused at the door. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked. "About coming back?" I stood slowly, met her eyes, and said, "You let them laugh while they erased me. There's no coming back from that." She nodded, didn't argue, didn't explain, and that, finally, was something close to respect. She left. I watched her go, and I returned to the silence I had chosen, not as a punishment, but as proof that sometimes the loudest thing a man can do is leave quietly. So tell me, if they had humiliated you, if your years of sacrifice ended with mockery and silence, would you have stayed? Or would you have walked away and let them learn, in the emptiness, who really held the house together?